These are the 7 capital ship classes explained. Before we dive in, let's discuss the classification system we're using. The Anaxis War College system was used to classify capital ships in the galaxy. With that said, let's dive into the first class. Corvettes. Ships of roughly 100 to 200 meters in length belong to the smallest of the 7 classes, Corvettes. Anything smaller than 100 meters, whether it be a fighter, shuttle, or freighter, is left out because, well, they are capital ships. That's another video for another day. Corvettes were typically small, fast, maneuverable, and relatively lightly armed. They filled a variety of roles that ranged from picket duty within large fleets to system defense and convoy escort. Corvettes filled a comparatively inexpensive gap in the capital ship range, perfect for groups like the Rebel Alliance. They were suitable for dealing with any ships smaller than themselves, and though corvettes were not effective against larger ships without support, many were famous for outrunning and escaping them, thanks to their exceptional speed and maneuverability. The most well-known corvette is absolutely the 150-meter-long CR-90, the most famous one being the Tantive 4. The consular ship of Princess Leia Organa in A New Hope. This CR-90 was used extensively across the galaxy by governments and private interests, largely because of its modular design that allowed for easy customization. Common configurations included a troop carrier, light escort vessel, cargo transport, or passenger liner. Frigates. Moving up to ships of roughly 200 to 400 meters in length, known as frigates, which serve typically in support roles to protect the larger ships we'll get to shortly. Others were intended primarily to defend unarmed freighters and transports. Frigates lacked maneuverability in battle, although many came armed with cannons and also carried starfighters. The most recognizable one would be the 300-meter-long EF-76 Nebulon B escort frigate, originally designed by the Galactic Empire to protect convoys from Rebel Alliance starfighter attacks. Ironically, the ship would gain more notoriety in use by the Alliance. While generally well-armed for a ship of its size, the long, skinny midsection of the Nebulon B was an exploitable vulnerability. Some Nebulon B frigates were also known to have been converted into hospital ships, such as the one that Luke Skywalker was treated on after having lost his hand in his duel with Darth Vader on Cloud City. Cruisers. Ships of roughly 400 to 600 meters in length were designated as cruisers and were depended on for a variety of roles. Cruisers could be further divided into 3 categories: light, medium, and heavy. The light cruisers were on the smaller end, around 350 to 400 meters, while medium cruisers between 400 and 600 meters. Heavy cruisers we'll get to in a second. These ships were good for defensive purposes, both against smaller ships and larger ones, and were known as the typical halfway point of the classifications, more so in capabilities than in size. While Star Cruiser isn't a class within the Anaxis War College system, that term is widely used throughout Star Wars in naming and to refer to ships in general, which can lead to confusion. An example would be the Mon Calamari Cruiser, which is twice as long as a ship that would actually belong within the cruiser class. A proper example would actually be the Empire's 600-meter-long Gladiator-class Star Destroyer, a long-range patrol vessel capable of pacifying an entire planet. Like we mentioned earlier, the naming in Star Wars doesn't always follow the rules. Heavy cruisers. The next step up, logically, would be heavy cruisers at roughly 600 to 1,000 meters in length. Long before the Clone Wars, heavy cruisers were among the largest starships in the galaxy, but that changed when the conflict forced a radical mobilization and larger, more powerful ships were constructed. Heavy cruisers were often the backbone of any fighting fleet, as they fulfilled many important roles, including planetary bombardment, troop transport, and participating in ship-to-ship combat. However, most heavy cruisers were not equipped with starfighters. A prime example would be the Republic's Acclamator-class assault ship, which was 752 meters long and was the predecessor of the later Republic and Imperial Star Destroyers. The Acclamator was designed to assault contestant systems, break hostile orbital blockades, and land troops directly on the battlefield, capable of offloading an entire legion of clone troopers and their vehicles in short order. The 900-meter-long Victory-class Star Destroyer is also technically a heavy cruiser, falling just 100 meters short of the next class in the Anaxis War College system. Destroyers. On to the proper destroyers, ships between 1 and 2 kilometers in length. The term originated with the idea of a warship powerful enough to destroy entire star systems with their heavy firepower. Notable examples, of course, include the Republic's Venator class and the Imperial class Star Destroyers, though there are so many that we made a dedicated Star Destroyer video, which you should totally check out after this one. Star Destroyers were relatively common warships for those galactic superpowers and dwarfed the frigates and cruisers that accompanied them. They were generally multi-role, though often the largest in many space battles, packing the most punch with their turbo lasers. Battle cruisers. This class was a stopgap between the one we just mentioned and the one we'll touch on next. Battle cruisers were ships of roughly 2 and 5 kilometers in length. One prominent example would be the First Order's Resurgent-class Star Destroyer, including Kylo Ren's flagship, the Finalizer. The Resurgent fixed many of the flaws of the Imperial class, while being twice the size of their Imperial predecessors. Most battlecruisers were among the most powerful in their fleets, designed for long-range, independent operations. However, the Galactic Empire saw them as less versatile and more expensive than destroyers, while also not instilling the same terror as the next class up. Dreadnoughts. Finally, we arrive at the largest class, consisting of all ships over 5 kilometers in length, the Dreadnoughts. Ships so massive that they were basically mobile cities. The most well-known example would be the Empire's 19-kilometer-long Executor-class Star Dreadnought, as well as other vessels often referred to as Super Star Destroyers, including Darth Vader's flagship, the Executor. This class boasted an unimaginable level of firepower. As with the smaller Star Destroyers, we also have a dedicated Super Star Destroyer video for your viewing pleasures. But we also need to mention another Dreadnought that probably warrants its own class. The single biggest ship we know of in Star Wars, the Supremacy. This is Snoke's ship, technically known as the Mega-class Star Dreadnought. Well, not as long as the Executor class at 13 kilometers, it was 60 kilometers wide. Again, that's more than the length of 3 Executors. This kind of proves that it doesn't always make sense to classify ships strictly by physical length, but more so by role or something like overall armament. This is why the Victory class is generally considered a Star Destroyer and not a cruiser. There's also the Secutor-class Star Destroyer, a carrier that was 2,200 meters long, but had a relatively light armament to fit under the battle cruiser designation. There are plenty of other examples out there that I'm sure will be mentioned in the comments, but it's important to remember Star Wars has never been consistent with their military logistics, but that doesn't make it any less fun to talk about. Before you go, let me know your favorite Star Wars capital ship in the comments, and remember to give those Star Destroyer videos a watch next. I'll catch you in the next one.